A growing number of Republicans are calling on President Trump to fire special counsel Robert Mueller after a series of damaging revelations about the agents on the Russia probe. This did not sit well with Chuck Schumer, who sounded the alarm on firing Mueller.
If the president were to fire special counsel Mueller, our country would face a constitutional crisis.
The president told reporters he's not going to fire Mueller. So if the special counsel stays, where does this investigation go now that so many questions have been raised about his credibility? Let me bring in Dan Heminger. He is the Wall Street Journal's deputy editorial page editor. Number one, there are so many of these Democratic lawmakers, Schumer, Warner, I think even Gutierrez in Congress is talking about what we're going to do if President Trump fires Mueller. I just think they're trying to egg him on, quite frankly.
I think there's something to that, Dagan. I mean, they sound as though they'll be disappointed if he doesn't fire Robert Mueller. And as the president said Sunday, no, he doesn't intend to do that. And I think that's the right choice. I mean, there's no point at this point in the game firing Mueller and trying to just replace him with something else. That doesn't really solve the problem of the underlying conflicts inside this investigation. I mean, let's roll back to what we're really talking about here, Dagan, from the beginning. This all started in January of this year, 11 months ago, when stories started to appear in all the media citing intelligence sources suggesting there was collusion between the Trump campaign or President Trump and the Russians, right? Those stories ran for about 6 months. Then we get Robert Mueller appointed. In fact, this story has not advanced very much at all from the original suggestions that there was collusion. I think if there had been anything more there, it would have been leaked to the press by now, or the FBI would be talking about it. Instead, we have reached a kind of state of gridlock with this story. And now questions are being asked about the FBI's role in all this, their role with the Steele dossier. And I think at least half the American people are saying to themselves, what is going on here with our major national security institutions, like the FBI and the Department of Justice?
Well, so Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director, gave testimony in front of the House Intelligence Committee. And now it looks like, because there were so many inconsistencies that appeared during this testimony. One thing, McCabe was asked about when he learned about that the dossier had been funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. He claimed he couldn't recall, but then there were reported existence of documents with McCabe's own signature on them establishing his knowledge of the dossier's financing and the provenance. See, this started last year, and I was sitting with Maria Bartiromo at the DNC when this narrative first developed after those emails were leaked about trying to establish some connection between then candidate Trump and Russia. Trump, Russia, Trump, Russia. Right. At the same time, this dossier had been put together, and this was right around the time, I think, that Steele had been talking to the FBI about what they had uncovered, and come to find out that Bruce Orr, who worked in the Justice Department, his wife helped put this together. There are just too many coincidences for there not to, at least for there not to be investigated.
Well, too many unexplained coincidences, and really too many half-baked coincidences. I mean, the dossier, the Christopher Steele dossier, sits at the middle of this story. And in this testimony the other day, it has been reported that Mr. McCabe was asked about the veracity of the dossier, and he defended the FBI's due diligence in investigating its veritability. But when he was asked for specifics, he said, for instance, Carter Page, Trump campaign worker, met with the Russians. Well, we know that. Carter Page has admitted that. And there's been nothing more beyond that point. And so how can you do anything other than step away from something like Mr. McCabe's testimony and say, what are you talking about? Don't you have anything more based on this dossier than that? This undermines the credibility of Christopher Steele and that dossier.
Real quick, Dan, how does this end? We do have the Justice Inspector General putting a report together, Michael Horowitz, that comes out. But is that going to be the end of this?
I do not think it would be a good thing if the credibility of the FBI were severely damaged by this investigation. And I think people inside the FBI are worried about that, especially Robert Mueller, who used to be the director. If that is the case, then I think Mr. Mueller should wrap this up as quickly as possible, for better or worse, rather than let it drag on as the FBI's credibility erodes.
Yeah, it's not Donald Trump damaging the credibility of the FBI. It's the actions of some agents and how they were talking.
All right, with the government funding battle temporarily delayed, the Democrats are now taking aim at the $1.5 trillion tax cut, hoping it will be a political loser for the GOP. But as we mentioned, even some left-wing commentators are worried that the Democrats' harsh criticism may backfire. Dave Weigel from the Washington Post writing, quote, Democrats routed but united against the tax bill plan to make it the centerpiece of a midterm campaign, one that may play out in a growing economy where the worst predictions about the tax cuts fall flat. Joining me now to discuss, Fox News politics editor and editor of the Halftime Report, Chris Steigerwald. Great to see you.
I'm glad to see Chad back out of the three-piece suit. We know that the crisis has passed. We're away from DEFCON 1.
Exactly. We have backed down one threat level assessment, but he's still there on the Hill because it was a busy day.
You never know. Right. They may do a do-over.
Okay, so we're hearing from Democrats that they are thrilled to run on this bill, that even the Tax Policy Center, which leans to the left, have said 80% of people are getting a cut. 15% see nothing. 5%, they're going to have some increase, but it's mostly high earners in blue states with high property taxes. Okay, so with all that aside, the Dems say this is going to be a good thing for them to campaign on. Here's what House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi says.
So you know the particulars of the bill, that it takes us deeply into debt. It does not produce growth. It is not a simplification. It is not for the middle class. So this is a welcome debate that we have. They said this is going to be a big campaign issue for them. We welcome that. We welcome.
I feel like I'm living in two different universes, because how can these two things be true? At least in the immediate future, we know there are issues 10 years down the road with these tax cuts and everything. But right now, what she's saying and what independent assessors are saying are two very different things.
Don't you? One of the most charming things about Washington is the only people who ever care about the deficit are the people who aren't in power.
Right.
They complain bitterly about deficit spending, and then as soon as they get in power, they say, no, this is a good deficit.
This is a different kind.
We really love this. Is a delicious deficit. Look. Campaigns are about more than one thing, and even within a single topic, you're talking to multiple audiences. So yes, for suburbanites, Republicans are going to be on good ground. They're going to say, hey, look, guys, we cut taxes, we cut your employer's taxes, jobs have improved, things are going up. The place where Democrats can take their message, this message about income inequality, they can take it to the surprising places where Donald Trump did well in 2016. They can go to places like where I grew up. They can go to places in the upper Midwest. They can go to Appalachia and say, here's what happened. You voted for Donald Trump and the Republicans because they were going to drain the swamp and stick it to the man, but they are the man. And they helped out Wall Street and they helped out big business, and they didn't help you out, because you and I both know that in most of the communities that have been left behind in the last 30 years, there ain't no tax cut that is going to make them do better. That's not what there's no panacea, and certainly tax cuts aren't probably going to do that for them. So this is a message that you can take to those folks. But yeah, you can't take it to people in the suburbs who are going to say, this is great. It's an extra $3 grand.
Well, and that's the thing is, the speaker keeps saying, look, just as soon as February, it's going to start showing up in your deductions and withholding out of your paycheck. So they feel confident that this is going to be something they do want to campaign on. I thought this was interesting, though. Richard Rubin, Wall Street Journal, points out, he says this is the gap. This is what he points to. In 2018, 80% of households will get tax cuts. But in our poll, Wall Street Journal poll, 17% of people think they're getting tax cuts. The Democrats always seem to win the messaging game.
Or the Republicans lose it.
Either way, yeah. Which either way matters in the midterms.
And either way matters a great deal. And let me connect these two dots. So you have shameful governance. The people of the United States take or have borrowed in their name $4.5 trillion or something every year. The inability of this government to deal with all of the basic things.
Spending.
Just to basically budget. Things that everybody can agree on, and then you have pressing issues about health insurance, you have pressing issues about immigration, pressing issues about national daggone security. And they're applauding themselves because they made it out before Christmas to kick the can another month. I promise you this, whatever they do about tax, or however people receive the taxes, and I think that generally speaking it will be a net positive for Republicans, if they look like nincompoops who cannot run the basic function of the government, if they're continuing to stagger from crisis to crisis, voters are going to hold that against them strongly.
Yeah, because they feel that every time we get to one of these cliffs, they're very aware that we're sitting here talking about it. Why can't people manage, as we do our household finances?
Right.
Why are they like drunken sailors, no matter which party?
And that's what they,
wandering around D.C.
And they get paid to do it. They get paid to do it. These are the only people who would possibly think of holding a press conference and congratulating themselves for barely making the bare minimum. So they need to do better if they want more trust.
I love the word nincompoops, by the way. It is underutilized. And I thank you for bringing it. Yes.
Bringing in that back.
We're going to start the hashtag nincompoops. Great to see you, Chris.
You bet.